Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a massive triumph of public health that actually carries a pretty sobering shadow. Humanity has hit this unprecedented milestone where we're just living longer than ever before. Thanks to all these historical breakthroughs in sanitation and medicine, a child born today can expect a lifespan that their ancestors couldn't even fathom. But as we're going to see, this huge win for modern science has created a really complex paradox. Basically, as our lifespans go up, so do the years we spend managing chronic illness, pain, and disability. Think about this, 73 years. That is the global average life expectancy right now. And because of this huge upward trend, we are constantly fed these cultural myths about a golden age of longevity, right? We literally picture vibrant, marathon-running 80-year-olds just effortlessly gliding through their twilight years. We're totally led to believe that medical advancements automatically translate into sustained health and vitality. But, well, the actual data reveals a very different reality on the ground. So we really have to stop and ask ourselves, are we actually living better? If we're successfully adding years to our lifespan, does that automatically mean we're adding life to those years? Or is modern medicine kind of just exceptional at prolonging biological survival? To get to the bottom of this, we need to look right past those surface-level celebrations of aging and dig into the hard numbers. Section 1. Understanding the health metrics. Beyond simply counting the years of survival. Let's put this into perspective. Imagine someone who lives to be 82 years old instead of 70. On paper, using traditional life expectancy metrics, that is a massive win. Medical safety nets swooped in and successfully kept their heart beating for over a decade longer. But what if out of those 82 years, the final 12 are spent managing severe osteoarthritis, progressive dementia, or the really tough, paralyzing effects of a stroke? The person is still alive, sure, but their daily mobility is heavily restricted, and they need help with the most basic tasks. Those 12 compromised years actually represent a super crucial metric called YLDs, or years lived with disability. Instead of just measuring when someone dies, YLDs measure the heavy burden of living with non-fatal health conditions that totally tank a person's quality of life. It's a distinct period where, yes, survival continues, but functional independence is severely compromised. And understanding this specific metric is literally the key to unlocking the whole longevity paradox. Section 2. The widening health gap. Diverging curves in human health. Okay, so if basic life expectancy tells us how long a population survives on average, but completely ignores the quality of those years, what's the alternative? Enter HALE, which stands for Healthy Life Expectancy. This metric estimates the equivalent number of years a person can realistically expect to live in full health, completely free from serious disease or debilitating conditions. You calculate it by just subtracting the equivalent healthy years lost from our overall life expectancy. And when you map these two metrics out side by side, a pretty startling trend emerges. Our healthy years simply haven't kept pace with our total lifespan. Globally, overall life expectancy has just tracked steadily upward for decades. But HALE, it hasn't climbed at nearly the same velocity. That growing gap between the two represents our unhealthy years. And as this gap widens, it tells us that while medical interventions are fantastic at preventing premature death, they are really failing to prevent the onset of chronic ailments. The absolute proportion of our lives spent unhealthy is actively expanding. Now, you're probably wondering, how on earth do scientists put a precise number on something like that? Well, epidemiologists calculate this health survival divergence by multiplying the prevalence of a disease by its disability weight. This is basically a value on a scale from 0, which is full health, to 1, representing death. Through successive global burden of disease studies, this math clearly shows that global YLDs per capita have drifted upward right alongside our rising life expectancies. We're surviving longer, absolutely, but we're carrying a much heavier burden of sickness while we do it. Section 3. The survival trade-off. The double-edged sword of modern medicine. To really grasp this, we have to recognize that our modern medical system is built on a massive survival bias. Think about it. Pharmaceuticals, advanced surgeries, ICUs, they are absolutely phenomenal at step 1, rescuing people from an acute, life-threatening crisis like a heart attack or a stroke. But step 2, the medical rescue, rarely offers a complete cure. Instead, it pushes patients right into step 3, chronic morbidity. People survive the initial crisis, which is great, but they transition into decades of managed multi-morbidity, meaning they're just living with multiple chronic conditions all running simultaneously. Because we are so incredibly good at that acute care, aging populations inevitably accumulate a heavy burden of non-communicable diseases, or NCDs. We're talking about things like musculoskeletal disorders, sensory loss, mental health conditions, and neurodegenerative diseases. Why is this happening? Because these conditions have a very high prevalence but a remarkably low fatality rate. Basically, they don't kill you quickly, they just stay with you. As a result, that rising curve of life expectancy is closely shadowed by a massive rise in NCDs. There's a quote that brilliantly illustrates our modern reality here. Medicine keeps the engine running, but it does not always prevent the parts from wearing down. Modern medicine has clinically excelled at postponing mortality. It's a fact, but in doing so, it has inadvertently left behind a global population that just survives longer into states of prolonged physical and mental impairment. Section 4. Redefining healthcare success. Shifting the goal from lifespan to health span. Look, we absolutely have to acknowledge that extending human life is a massive, monumental win for our species. It's incredible. However, as the source material points out, we just cannot let the sheer quantity of years completely overshadow the quality of that existence. This whole paradox of modern longevity forces a critical shift in how we need to view healthcare success moving forward. So, how do we resolve this widening gap? The future of medicine and public health has to pivot. The new goal needs to be compressing morbidity. Rather than merely delaying death and accidentally stretching out the period of illness, we need to squeeze that period of chronic disease into the absolute shortest possible time frame at the very, very end of life. The ultimate objective is making sure that the extra decades you, your parents, and your kids gain are actually marked by health, independence, and dignity, rather than just prolonged disability. As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a question to challenge how you view the ultimate goal of longevity. When you look at the trajectory of all these incredible medical advancements, ask yourself, are the extra years we are striving so hard to gain actually years worth living? Thanks so much for joining me to explore the data behind the longevity paradox. Keep questioning the numbers, and I'll catch you next time.